guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Yes. I don't know about you guys, but the other 6 days of the week, I don't even sleep. I just wait for Reckless Speculation Thursday and inside information about your favorite local sports teams with our friend Darren Doogie Wilf and Judd.
You miss Tuesdays, Phil, and I'm going to tell you right now, Tuesdays are turning into, I don't want to say they're as good as Thursdays, but I think my friends Darren and Declan would confirm that they get pretty exciting.
It's a nice appetizer. It's a nice appetizer for the main course that is Thursday of Reckless Speculation.
Listen, I don't even know if this needs to be considered the main course. I think it's like we've got two great speculative segments a week on this show. We even bring Reckless Speculation Thursday to Wednesday yesterday. So, Doogie, what's going on, man? How are you today?
Good morning, Phil. Yeah, I would say Tuesday is not nearly as reckless as maybe today, Thursday is, but no doubt, new year. This would be, the first Thursday of 2022, so the first Reckless Speculation Thursday of 2022, yet the same old excitement going back multiple years. All is well, Phil. I just got off of Zoom. Thank you for your flexibility. With new Gophers defensive end, Lorenza Surgers, transfer from Vanderbilt. He's all about wanting to get to the NFL, so it was time to get out of Nashville. He has 2 years of eligibility remaining. He may slot in, take the spot of Bouye Mafe. I was swapping messages with Bouye the other day. He's out in California already doing a bunch of draft prep. I fully expect him to get a combine invite in the very near future.
Nice. Well, let's start here. I'm going to read you some quotes from Mike Zimmer, who spoke on his weekly Vikings.com show. And I'll read the quotes, and then let's open up a discussion about whatever you guys are hearing, whatever all of us are theorizing as well, about the current situation with Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman and what the Wilfs may or may not do here in the next week. So Zimmer was by the way, PA framed up the question like, the mob, like basically the mob is trying to cancel Mike Zimmer as a head coach, and, the media.
Score North mob.
Like, listen, the Vikings haven't been above 500 in 700 days, so it's not just like a media-driven thing here. Zimmer certainly doesn't have train wreck seasons on his resume, but they haven't been good enough, and he is the head coach. So Zimmer said, quote, regardless of anything that goes on after the season, I can stand proud. When I walk into a stadium like Lambeau or I walk into U.S. Bank Stadium, I say to myself, 1 billion people would love to be sitting here right now and doing this job, which is true. I do think it's different that people can talk about your job and being let go and things like that and not understanding the effects of all your coaches, effects on the players, effects on the families, and they say it after you lose every single week that you should be let go. So they don't go around saying that they should fire a doctor or fire a landscape guy or anything like that. So it's just part of the business, I guess, as he sort of reflects on the tenuous nature of his current job status.
Well, guess what? That landscape guy or woman, I'm assuming, maybe dangerously, but I'm assuming would happily trade paychecks with Mike Zimmer to face, if you have to, that scrutiny. It comes with the territory. Now, I've heard Mike in some other interviews offer up that caveat that, hey, this is what we sign up for. So let's add that to the end of that sentence. But yeah, it hasn't been good enough. But I don't necessarily disagree with Mike that there's a lot to be proud about, especially the pre-Cousins era, those first 4 years. I think he did a lot of good. I think about the mess he inherited, 2014, cleaning up a lot of messes, particularly on defense, 2014, 2015, 2016. There's a lot to like. Phil, I can make a strong case. Now, maybe it's obvious, but some might say Chili. Maybe somebody would say somebody else, but I think he's the third best coach in Vikings history. Bud Grant into Denny Green into Mike Zimmer. We can celebrate a lot of what Mike accomplished, but sometimes it's just time. And after 8 years, 2 consecutive years of not being over 500, missing the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years, now we have this extra playoff team per conference. It's just time for a different look, a different feel. It's time to bring somebody else in.
Now, Dukes, to go back to our bonus scoop on Tuesday, I had heard, and I'm told that this took place, that the Wilfs and probably just as importantly ownership, because it's not just two, it's a group obviously of investors and people, were going to meet last night to discuss the situation. Now I'd like to throw something at you that confirms your reporting, and I'd like to start this by saying I understand we all want answers right now, but the reality is this is fluid. Like this is not, it's not done. Things aren't done yet. There's frustration. I think that there are changes on the horizon, but that being said, things are not set in stone. So we are literally recording these shows hour by hour, with opinions mixed with fact. So like everything we say is not fact, and everything we say is not just us spitballing. I got a note from somebody yesterday on Twitter, though, that was very intriguing, Dukes. And it was clear that it was a person who has some pretty good ducats probably to the Vikings. And their note was, when you say the people will speak with their checkbooks and not renew their tickets, and this is a great point, you are forgetting that there are personal seat licenses attached to all of the best seats and probably quite a few seats in US Bank Stadium. And so if I say, well, you know what, screw you guys, I'm done, I don't get my PSL back unless I can sell it, which you would sell right now at a loss. The point being is ownership knows for a fact that the people that pay the most to be in that stadium can't just walk away and say, I'm done here, that there are decisions, that there is money. And that gets us to what you've said. And this is the really intriguing thing. I think a change is coming of some sort, but Zimmer is signed through 2023. We knew that. But what you have reported, and I believe to be 1000% accurate now, is he is guaranteed, if not all, almost all of that contract. So to fire Mike right now, to fire him on Monday, well, I think it would be the prudent thing and the smart thing, would also be to have to write him a massive check in a time of a pandemic, and in a time where certainly 2020, you did not necessarily maximize revenues. All of that being said, again, it's fluid. I think a change is coming, but it gives you something to think about and ponder. And I will say this, don't dismiss it.
Well, we can certainly ponder it, but there hasn't been any evidence going back 16, 17 years, right, 05, of the Wilfs not willing to cut checks, to do all they have to do financially to help this franchise meet its ultimate goal of winning a championship. Now, you had the initial steam on Tuesday of the ownership gathering on Wednesday night. I have not confirmed as we sit here at 10:20 on Thursday morning, 10:20 Central Time, that meeting indeed took place, but we have every reason to believe a meeting took place. So I would imagine, Judd, call me crazy, that they know right this second what they are going to do early next week. I don't for sure know, but yes, do I expect some sort of change? I do. I guess also let me follow the trail. So what you're suggesting is, okay, so Zim's on the hook for next year at approximately $8 million. That's 2022. This year, I guess, this next season. Yeah. Then if it's not a full guarantee for 2023, it's darn close. So, somewhere in the neighborhood of 6, 7, 8 million. Let's just, for sake of this conversation, ballpark it at $14 to $15 million. So you're saying there could be reluctance from the Wilfs to not pay Zim $14 to $15 million because they fear people giving up their personal seat licenses. Thus, they'd have to resell those seat licenses, and it would be challenging to sell those seat licenses? No,
I'm saying they're confident that those people would be those people would not bail, and therefore, therefore they don't want to be paying two coaches simultaneously when the fired coach has nearly a guaranteed contract into the 2023 season. That's what I'm saying. They've got the PSL cash coming in. They're confident that they will keep the people who own those seats, because the only way that they can protest, right, is by dropping their tickets. But the PSL is theirs. That cash is the Wilfs. So what I'm saying is, in this time of slight uncertainty as far as finances go. They don't want to be necessarily, and this might not just be the Wilfs. There are people involved here beyond the Wilfs. They're at the forefront, but that's my point, is like, this is an entire discussion among investors as well. And so I could see some folks saying the fans are stuck. Why would we pay a new GM potentially? We would be paying Mike and a new coach who's going to command a big salary. So, yeah, no, I am not saying that the Wilfs are concerned about the PSLs being gone. I'm saying they think the fans might be stuck, and they would be, to a certain degree, 100% right.
It's interesting fodder, but don't you think deep down the Wilfs are willing to still pay whatever it takes, even through this pandemic, through the money that, I don't want to say they lost, but I guess revenue lost out on last year when fans were not in the stands? Don't you still think, because we foresee some sort of change coming, don't you think that deep down the Wilfs are willing to cut whatever check is necessary? Because I do.
I think they should be, yeah. Yeah, I would hope so. I'm just saying, keep this in mind as a conversation that I don't think you're going to hear in a lot of different places in the coming days.
Yeah, so basically, like, to unpack this a little bit, from a fan perspective, it's very obvious this thing has grown stale. A change needs to be made. Offensive football has evolved beyond the point where, like, Mike Zimmer even can handle coaching defense against it, it seems like. And so the obvious football move is to say, thank you so much for a competitive 8 years. There were some great moments. Ultimately, our goal is to win a Super Bowl. That they might not just look at it that simply. I actually find that sort of offensive on behalf of fans, too, that they might look at, and by the way, how many times throughout the years have fans used the Vikings and prop the Vikings up as an example of a franchise that will do anything? They'll spend any amount of money, of course. The salary cap in the NFL structure guarantees that each team is going to rake in, $100 or $200 million in profits or whatever it is. But look at the Twins, the cheap Twins. They can't even go out and spend a dime on a starting pitcher and this and that, right? They're always doing things on the cheap. This would be an example if they chose to not make this move, if they knew that this was the right move to make from a football perspective, but they said, I don't know if we're going to want to eat $15 or $16 million. And really, like, the fans are kind of locked in with these season tickets anyway. So even if there's backlash, it's not going to hurt us financially. Like, then you can throw every single comparison that you ever used to prop the Vikings owners up over the Twins owners out the window as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's why I have a hard time, Phil, believing it. Judd, do you know, is there offset money? So let's say, hypothetically, Dan Quinn gets the Raiders job or the Jacksonville job or some other job. The Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator job is open.
Yep.
And Jerry Jones calls Mike and says, Mike, come on home. I'd like for you to be my defensive coordinator. Here's a contract that pays you more than fair market value for being the Cowboys defensive coordinator, whatever that might be, $2 million, $2.5 million, maybe even upwards of $3.5 million. Is there offset money? So let's say Mike Zimmer, and it doesn't need to be Dallas, that's just a hypothetical, but Mike Zimmer is a defensive coordinator somewhere next year, making 7 figures. Does that money then offset what the Vikings owe him?
That I don't know. And keep in mind, too, so how can I paint this accurately? Mike got himself, like here's the weird thing, guys. The Cousins and Zimmer contracts that they are under right now are very interesting because, especially in Mike's case, I mean, I firmly believe, again, to go back to the win in the playoffs against the Saints in the Superdome, if the Vikings lose that game, I think Mike is gone. But Mike got an extension. And Mike worked very hard, clearly, and his camp did, to get an extension that was through 2023. I'm just spitballing here again, but I find Mike to be a combative guy who is probably going to be pretty surly, no pun intended, if he gets fired. Therefore, my guess with a guy like Mike is he would take if he sticks in the game to be a DC Dukes, that he would take a contract that was probably, fair, but not great, because he knows the Vikings have to pay him. And my guess is a team would say, you know what, Mike, that's a great idea. Like you're going to be the Vikings. If there is indeed language in the contract that offsets it, the Vikings are on the hook for what we don't pay you.
$15 an hour sounds great to me,
Exactly.
Jerry.
Well, I mean, I guess
exactly.
the comp would be Ryan
Yes.
Saunders being the lowest paid NBA coach after they had to pay Tom Thibodeau
Mhm.
all that money, right? That
Correct.
the Wolves were able to save money by hiring Ryan Saunders. I don't know though. Are there rules, maybe unwritten rules, but like, can you take a well below market value contract? I guess
We
I
would
need to
never
find
know.
out if there's an offset to begin with. I
We
can
would
reach
never
out
know.
to an agent friend and find out that answer. I still though, bottom line, it's what we discussed on Tuesday, Judd. I
Mhm.
think change is coming. I do. I can see a scenario where Rick Spielman is retained but loses his authority. I can see a scenario where Mike Zimmer is let go, that they bring in a new czar of football operations, and I can see it being a minority, then allowing that person to hire the next head coach. Phil, one thing I asked Judd is, could you see any scenario? I don't think this will happen, but Phil, I'll run it by you. Could you see any scenario where the news on Monday is Rick Spielman is being reassigned? We will hire a new czar of football operations, then allow that person to determine Mike Zimmer's future.
I'd want to know how far down the road have they gone the last like 2, 3, 4 weeks? Because what I don't want to happen, what I think would actually be wildly irresponsible and incompetent of ownership, is if they start the process on Monday when they could have started it in some form, especially with the front office. Like, I can see why you keep the coach in place because someone's got to run the football. Like, someone's got to run the practices and the game planning and everything. But if they were going to make a move on Rick Spielman and bring in somebody else to run the front office, they should not be starting that process from zero on Monday. They should have been doing legwork on that for 2, 3, 4 weeks so that if that person's going to choose the next head coach, they're ready to come in and start the job next week. I actually think the scenario you painted, though, regardless of whether they started the process 3 weeks ago or whether they're starting on Monday, is the most likely. I don't think they just blow out both Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer. I think they would look at that as, I don't know what the word is, but I don't think they want to just dismiss the work that those guys have done for 8 and 15 years respectively as like, you know, here's a press release, you're both fired, thanks for your service. Like, no, the Vikings haven't won a Super Bowl, but they've been competitive for 15 years. And Rick Spielman, even though he has some flaws, has put together very competitive and sometimes even, you know, contender rosters for the better part of 15 years. Mike Zimmer is well above 500, might be the third best coach in Vikings history. So I think they're trying to weigh, how can we, if we're going to make some moves here, how can we do it in the most tactful, respectful way possible? And blowing them both out and starting from zero doesn't seem like the direction they would go. I think Spielman moving to sort of an advisory, cushy executive role and bringing somebody else in like the Broncos did and then finding a new coach seems like the odds-on favorite of all the possible scenarios, to me anyways.
Yes, if I were making betting lines, that very scenario would be the betting favorite. It would. I wonder. I've thought, let me add one note on Mike Zimmer, something he brought up, at least with my colleague Joe Schmidt in a conversation early September, that he is well aware that he is the 8th longest tenured head coach. The 7 above him have all won a Super Bowl. But that's where it's a delicate situation because he has how many games above 500? Is it 14, 15 games above 500? He did accomplish a lot of good. But when you look at those above him, all winning the title, that's the one thing that he didn't come close to doing. I get it that, you know, he made it to the Final Four, but in, you know, all practical purposes, he did not come close to winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
He just didn't.
Okay, play the sounder because I've got a potential one here.
Speculation.
And I've got examples. All right. So I think we need to weigh that what Phil is saying about the Wilfs and the current administration coaching staff is probably correct. And I also think we can't dismiss the pandemic entirely. And I know that these people are billionaires, but they still count their coins. And this could, and again, it's incredible. I'm sure there are people that want Mike gone. In fact, Mike to me is acting like Mike is gone. So there is a very good scenario that you could paint a path to Monday at 2:00. They get up to a podium and announce Mike has been fired. We appreciate Mike. But what about this one too? Because I think we all agree the odds are Rick Spielman is not going to be summarily fired, that he's going to be put into a different job. Also signed through 2023. So you're paying Rick. So if Rick gets put into a different job, it's like, hey, Rick, here's what you're getting, and that's cool. You hire, and Dukes and I both have heard this team's been doing a lot of background on GM candidates for probably a month now or more. They've got a list. So you hire a new GM at that point in time. You tell the GM, we're going to need you to watch a year of Mike. Like you can observe him. If you want to keep him eventually and we turn things around, that's cool. But we are giving you one of 32 coveted jobs, head of personnel of a National Football League team. And I got two examples off the top of my head where, for various reasons, we've seen the exact same thing. One is 2021, George Payton, Denver. Gets the job. Vic Fangio's our guy, George. And now I think Vic is gone. But you know what it is? It's a year of Vic. So you didn't have to pay Vic to go away and then pay a coach. The second one I covered, 2000, what would it have been? 2004 into 2005. Ted Thompson hired as GM of the Packers. Mike Sherman had been the co-GM and coach. They didn't fire Mike. Mike stayed as coach. We need you to watch a year of Mike. And now that was probably, to Phil's point, to be fair, but that was also because they didn't want to probably pay two guys. My point being is there is precedent that the Wilfs could look at to say, we don't feel comfortable. One, we feel it's a bad look. And then two, privately, it's going to strap us a little bit financially. That said GM, who I think would still take the job, would swallow hard and put up with a year of Mike to get a fresh start in 2023.
So let me add a couple things. I think that's really interesting. And I'm going to give you the sounder again, because that is just peak reckless speculation.
And to be clear, I don't like that one. I'm spitballing it out.
So that seems very plausible for all the reasons that have been laid out in the last 20 minutes when it comes to how much money Mike Zimmer is still guaranteed for a couple years, for how methodical the Wilfs operate in terms of firing coaches and general managers. They don't like turnover. They like stability. So this would be a way to create a major change, to not just light money on fire that they've guaranteed for the next couple of years, but then I would think the next two prerequisite boxes that have to be checked are new and more experienced offensive coordinator. And I think Mike Zimmer has already laid that groundwork. Like he came out and ripped Clint Kubiak's play calling 2 days ago. And I don't think Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins want to work together anymore. So if you're going to keep Zimmer, and then you're almost sort of catering to Zimmer, right? You're coming in, you're saying, all right, you never wanted Kirk to begin with, and so we can't erase the last 4 years, but we're going to give you what you originally wanted, which is a non expensive mediocre quarterback. And there's a million options. We went over a bunch of them on Mackey and Judd yesterday. So you would separate those two by trading Kirk Cousins, and you'd bring in a different offensive coordinator. I could absolutely see that scenario for a year. Doogie.
Yeah, well, it's what I brought up either in this space or maybe it was a Tuesday conversation, but a couple weeks ago, that it's hard for me to see a scenario where it's Kirk and Mike here in 2022. So if we want to play out bringing in a new GM, the Vic Fangio comp, the Sherman Thompson comp, I'm sure there are other ones as well where GM comes in and oversees things for a period of time, then makes a determination on the coach's future. Yeah, I don't then see Kirk here. Mm-hmm. He can be traded. Now, you name the team, the Steelers, some other team that needs a quarterback, they would work with Kirk's agent to redo the deal, extend the deal. Like, we all know that Kirk, wherever he is, right, he can't be on some team's cap for $45 million in 2022. But yes, now, would I make that scenario the betting favorite? No. The scenario I would make the betting favorite. But is it plausible? Yeah, I don't think I can dismiss that possibility. It is a lot of money. You're right. I don't care how much money the Wilfs have, how much they've made. You're right. Cutting somebody in the neighborhood of a $15 million check to go away is an absurd amount of money. I think they know what they're going to do. I don't know. But I think after the meeting that was supposed to take place on Wednesday, Judd and Phil, I think they know right this second what they are going to do.
And let me ask you this. Let's take the fan emotion out of it. I know there's so many fans that are just fed up with Zimmer, and they want the Vikings to be better than they are, and Zimmer is one of the main reasons it's preventing, like, they're playing mid-90s football. But let's take the fan emotion out of it. Do we think that the Vikings locker room is on the verge of revolting against Mike Zimmer? Do we think it's toxic? Because I don't know that it's toxic. I just think that they've just hit a glass ceiling in terms of what the football team can accomplish the way that Mike Zimmer views football in 2022. I don't know that it's currently toxic, but what do you guys think?
I would agree with that assessment. I think that there are guys who are, and they should be frustrated. I think that there are guys who look at Clint and say, what were we doing there? Do I think it's like Mike has to be fired or I'm gone? No, I don't. And so to explore this path too, because Dukes just took us down a road that I think plays a key role in the potential that you get a new GM, you keep Zimmer for now, and I think he's then let go after 22, but that's a different story. Here's what I think changes the dynamic of the locker room, and I think that there are some in the Vikings front office who were blocked by ownership from exploring this last year, but this year I think would be a go. That is the departure of one Kirky Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins' departure changes, and this is where people, again, Phil and Dex and Dukes, this is where people don't want to talk about the intangible aspect of Kirk. He is near the bottom of the league when it comes to ability to lead and ability to take control. Like, he is a top 10 on his best day QB. I'll continue to say that, but that's not all this job entails. So I think if you keep Mike, which I'm not in favor of, I just want to keep saying that, but these are plausible scenarios we're discussing. If you keep Mike, you bring in a new GM and say, you can't fire Mike, but here's what you can do. You can explore trading Kirk. And now you bring in a cheaper quarterback. You save $35 million towards the cap. You start to bring in ancillary position players who are better than what you currently have. You bring in, to Phil's point again, a new OC. Do I think the dynamic in that locker room changes like that? Yes, I do. And that's how I think you make this work. I don't think Mike is the main problem. I think Mike, as he currently is, which is in a bad mood constantly, I think he's part of the problem, but I think it can be rectified at least short term.
So, like, the other thing, too, is the first 4 years of Mike Zimmer, they averaged 10 wins per season. I mean, he laid it out. We've gone over the quotes from the NFL Combine in 2018 where he's saying, listen, we've built something pretty special here. I know that we just got smoked in the NFC Championship game, but we have 40 wins in the first 4 years. There's a certain dynamic in the locker room that we love. And yes, based on Teddy's injury and based on, the fact that we think Case Keenum's a magic carpet ride or a carriage about to turn into a pumpkin, we need a new quarterback. But let's be careful about spending a ton of money on someone that's going to come in, take away from what we can do salary-wise on defense. Like, I think Mike would say, and again, it's also possible that the game has passed him by more in the last 4 years and you can't just rewind the clock, but he would say, let's go back to the way that we were doing things in the first 4 years and not pay a good quarterback elite money. Let me do it the way that I want to do it. And also, in those first 4 years, he was hiring former head coaches to basically be the head coach of the offense, right? Norv Turner, Pat Shurmur. And I don't know, somewhere along the line he said, all right, I just want someone that I can control and tell what to do, which is a huge fatal mistake for him. He needs a more experienced offensive coordinator that he can just outsource it to, that he trusts, not a 34-year-old that was the wide receivers coach at Kansas 5 years ago.
I think what Mike would say, though, when that scenario was put towards him by the Wilfs, I think what Mike would say is, we kept Gary's kid Clint here because we didn't want to change the system again, because Kirk didn't want it changed again.
Well, and real quick to your, because the first thing you just said there was, if you paint this scenario for Mike, let's paint this scenario. You bring Mike into a room on Monday, and in his mind, he thinks, I'm probably getting fired. And you say, actually, we're moving Rick Spielman out of the GM role. We're going to bring somebody else in here to give us a fresh perspective to run the football operations. And Mike's like, oh, tell me more. Do tell, please. Then you mean the guy that drafted 4 third-round picks that I don't think are NFL players, that so we can get the guy out of here that I don't see eye to eye with. And that's not all, Mike. We're going to get Kirk Cousins out of here too. We're going to trade him, save $35 million to the cap, and we're going to help you find a better offensive coordinator. I mean, this would be like the dream scenario for Mike Zimmer if you painted this for him on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, if the Vikings Entertainment Network had a camera in that room to capture that moment, like, that would be an all-time GIF, right? Like, Zimmer's reaction would be priceless. That would be perfect for Mike. It's not toxic. To answer your question, Phil, from my point of view, not toxic. If you do want to use the word quit, at least on Sunday night, there was some quit on Sunday night, but it's not a toxic locker room. There's some selfishness, maybe a lot of selfishness in that locker room, but definitely not toxic, definitely not any sort of, revolt coming, that they want Mike out. I've never once sensed that. Okay, so let's keep going down this rabbit hole. So Sunday could be the final Vikings game for Kirk Cousins. It's also the last Vikings game for who else? Because if you look at all the guys that either could be cap casualties, guys playing on one-year contracts, guys in the final year of their contracts, Sunday is the final game for how many different players?
Well, let's throw out some
final
names
game
here.
in purple.
I think it could be, if he doesn't agree to a restructure, Thielen's, but I think he will. I think they'll get him down. But
I think Adam Thielen is here in 2020.
The one nobody is talking about is Eric Kendricks. Eric Kendricks is the 4th highest cap hit on the team. This was by far his worst season, according to Pro Football Focus, and he's over the age of 30 now. You could save like $8 million to the cap by saying
the cap
goodbye to
is
Eric
going
Kendricks.
up. You need to spend money somewhere. I think Eric Kendricks is back, but Anthony Barr.
Well, he's gone. Yeah.
I don't see, and he restructured his deal, so he's an unrestricted free agent. But I don't see a scenario where Barr is back.
I think they just have to. They're eating $9 or $10 million for Barr just to not be here next year in cap space.
Yeah. What's the Michael Pierce number if you have numbers in front of you, Phil?
Yep. So Michael Pierce, his cap hit would be like the 6th highest or 7th highest on the team at 10.5. You could save 6.5 by cutting him or trading him.
I think, unfortunately, because good dude, good player when able to play, but durability, availability matters.
Yep.
I mean, he has played, 8 games in 2 years? I don't think you can roll those dice in 2022.
What's the cap hit potentially if Dalvin Tomlinson, who was just signed last March, is not retained?
It's actually you'd wind up losing money. So you would his cap hit is 7.5, but he has $10 million left in dead cap. So you would actually be paying more to the cap. So I think if you're going to look at those two guys, you're going to keep Dalvin Tomlinson and say goodbye to Michael Pierce.
And Tomlinson then would shift back to the nose tackle, because that's the problem too. I don't know why they were so convinced that nose tackles playing side by side and saying, Dalvin, you're skinnier. Our 3-tech was going to work. Like, the 3 technique now is, 1, it's incredibly important, and 2, it's a tough position. Like, you just can't be the fat guy that gets moved there. It's like, hey, I'm good here now. I think a new GM would probably insist to Mike that one of those two can stay, but not both. So it's probably Pierce. But the biggest one is Hunter. Danielle Hunter's contract. I mean, the guy's a marvelous player. Don't get me wrong, but he hasn't been healthy for 2 years. And that March payment, you're going to have to make a decision there.
Yeah.
And he worked, his representatives last spring and summer worked long and hard to get that current contract. So I don't think they're just going to be good campers and good sports and be like, oh, we'll take another.
So
that's a tough one.
And so just to paint the picture, and I retweeted a graphic at Phil Mackey if you want to see it. It's every team's cap space going into 2022. And the Vikings are one of like 5 teams that's over the, even though the cap is going up by like $25 million, the Vikings are one of 5 teams that's over the cap. They're over the cap by like $11 million. So they have to find places. There's a bunch of teams with $40, $50, $70 million to spend in cap space. So it's one, you got to get under the cap. And then 2, you got to clear out like 20, 30, 40, $50 million somehow, which is going to be almost impossible if you want to be actual players in free agency. But Danielle Hunter represents one of the biggest chunks. So his cap hit is the second highest on the team. It's a $26 million cap hit for next year.
Yeah.
You could save $19 million to the cap by cutting him, but then you're cutting a Hall of Fame edge rusher,
right?
And you need another edge rusher of some kind. So it's easy to sit here and say, oh yeah, you can just say goodbye to Michael Pierce and Adam Thielen and Danielle Hunter, and it's like, yeah, but now you need to fill those roster spots on top of the needs that you have at right guard and center, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, is that where it would make sense for the Wilfs to finally decide to hit the reset button? That you make the move on Mike on Monday, you bring in a new GM, you decide, okay, in all likelihood, it's going to be hard for us to compete in 2022, but 2023, 2024, let's accumulate draft picks. Let's go that route, bring in a young offensive mind, let that coach grow. Now, I suppose it could work out, best case scenario, like Philadelphia, right? I mean, Philadelphia tried to hit the reset button, yet here they are. Now, a lot of stuff went their way, including a favorable schedule down the stretch, but the Eagles are one of the NFC playoff teams this year. By the way, they tanked Week 17 last year. Did that have any impact on this year? You know, that's another talking point that I just don't understand. I get it from Zim's standpoint, but if I'm ownership, if I'm the front office, you know, I'd make a strong recommendation to Mike to play the young guys. Now, if they play well and you win the game on Sunday, fine, so be it. But I would be all about finding a way to lose on Sunday. Heck, how much would you enjoy having Rashawn Slater right now? The Vikings winning that meaningless Week 17 game last year in Detroit, in many ways, you know, it resulted in them not landing the tackle that they really, really wanted.
So would you be wise if you are going to go down the path of promoting Rick and in actuality demoting Rick, keeping Mike around, bringing in a new GM and probably looking to trade Kirk? If you're football savvy people, wouldn't you be wise to call Mike in if you've decided by now on Saturday and say, be good to see the young kids, Mike. You might not get it right now, why exactly, but you'll like this. You'll like that.
Sure, if he's guaranteed 2022.
If he's coming back, it makes
then I think you would have. I would have that conversation. I don't know if the Wilfs will, but
right.
I certainly would have that conversation with Mike on Saturday if I've come to the determination he is my coach in 2022, that he has nothing to worry about on Sunday. Yeah. And let me remind everybody, there are no guarantees. You could play the young guys. The Bears are that bad. You could still win the game.
The Bears also have a vested interest
in anything.
Yeah. The Bears have a vested interest in also not winning that game. Although Matt Nagy's going to try and coach to win because he's going to want his resume to look as good as possible.
Correct.
On LinkedIn on Tuesday.
They have, what, a 2-game winning streak? Haven't they won both games since the Monday night loss to the Vikings?
Yeah, have they?
So there's something to be said about they're still trying. Robert Quinn, I mean, Quinn's at 18 sacks. I'm sure in his mind, like, he'd love to get to 20 sacks. He missed a game, by the way. But, yeah, Robert Quinn's got that, you know, hovering, you know, in the stratosphere of thoughts of, hey, I'm going to play my ass off on Sunday. I'm sure there's some other examples. But, yeah, I'm sure the Bears are going to play to win on Sunday. And those Vikings players that are out there are going to play to win. But I'm just saying, if they can find a scenario where they give themselves the best opportunity to lose, it can be beneficial. Drafting as high as possible is a really good thing. I'm telling you. Most recently, ask the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah. Wow. Man. All right, give us because we got this has been just an epic scoop session. Give us one more of your favorite scoops here for the road.
Well, I mean, it glossed over somewhat. I just, don't undersell the minority angle. That when looking, if you're making a list of potential candidates, especially with GM candidates, to go that route. I told Judd on Tuesday, Phil, there is a very logical GM candidate, very, very logical GM candidate. This individual has interviewed for previous GM jobs. He has told me, doesn't mean that he's 100% right on this, spot on, but he has told me his sense is, because he's had his eye on this situation, his sense is the Wilfs will go the minority route.
Mm-hmm. I know Louis Riddick's name keeps popping up, because he's on Monday Night Football, and he's excellent on TV.
He's great,
and he's interviewed for jobs before. I think we're probably going to do a lot of that, where it's like, the analysts we see on TV, but there's probably 5 or 6 guys that no one's ever heard of that are, second, third in line with the Cowboys, with the Tampa Bay, whatever.
Dallas, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Arizona, those 4 in particular.
Yeah. So, all right, Dukes, great stuff, man. Just freaking awesome. Love this.
Absolutely. Quickly on the Wolves, they're not re-signing Greg Monroe. I didn't foresee that happening, but I had that mini scoop on Wednesday. So Greg Monroe off to the Washington Wizards. Tomorrow is guarantee day for Jalen Noel. I don't think Jalen Noel has anything to worry about. I think he'll be here beyond tomorrow. His contract will become fully guaranteed for the year.
He's awesome. He's a great player.
Yeah.
So, all right, Dukes, that's Darren Doogie Wolfson from 5 Eyewitness News and the Scoop Podcast. We'll see you next week, buddy.
Got it. And one other one, Phil, because we are the home of St. Thomas Athletics. Tonight in St. Paul, Oral Roberts. They went to the Sweet 16 last season. They play St. Thomas. Those two teams 1-2 in all of Division I, over 300 teams in Division I. St. Thomas, Oral Roberts 1-2 in 3-pointers made. Oral Roberts has a player, Max Abmas, who led Division I in scoring last year, the reigning Summit League Player of the Year. He's got some NBA skill. The Timberwolves will have a scout in the building tonight.
Boom. Yeah, so you can hear that game on AM 1500 Score North Radio in the Twin Cities, just like you can hear all of the St. Thomas basketball and hockey games and football. All right, Dukes. See you, buddy.
Okay, see you, boys. Bye,
Doogie.
Man, reckless speculation Thursday. Just freaking.
Hold on. I gotta smoke a cigarette and take a nap.
Let's actually take a minute to collect ourselves.
That exact thing.
And then let's come back because Kirk Cousins said something really interesting that we have to get to as well. And old tweets exposed, Mackey and Judd.